Hey nurses, Nurse Rooms here. I'm a dialysis nurse here in the Philippines and welcome back to my channel where I upload videos all about dialysis and my journey in discovering nursing career. By now, you must have already reached the acceptance stage that led you here and have already undergone some self-reflection because for today's video, we are on to the next stage and I'm gonna share with you 3 resources that worked and helped me pass the NCLEX the second time around. You may have failed the exam, but good news is you've passed the first time jitters. Take it as an advantage. You've already been to the examination area, you've been exposed to the whole process, and on top of that, you've taken NCLEX itself. And that's one less thing to worry about. What you should do now is to prepare in a whole new different approach. Because unfortunately, what you did last time didn't work. The first step is to make a commitment that you will test again. Decide when you want to schedule your test and allow yourself enough time to prepare. Remember, you cannot retake NCLEX exam for 45 to 90 days depending on your state board of nursing. So you may as well prepare within that time. In my case, I scheduled it twice since the first one I was still having doubts. You can do this through live chat and reschedule for free with no additional charge. I then took mine 3 months after my first date. The next step is to figure out why and how you failed the exam. I took mine last 2019 and the minimum number of questions was still 75, up to a maximum of 265 questions in 6 hours. I think it was during COVID that these numbers were lowered, so it's now a minimum of 60 questions to a maximum of 130 questions in 5 hours. If you fail the exam, then you will receive a CPR, a Candidate Performance Report, a 2-page document that tells you how many questions were answered and how many are required to be evaluated according to NCLEX 8 content areas. If you are answering above the level needed to pass or far below the level needed to pass, your exam will end at 60 questions. Let me show you. If you failed at 60 questions, you most likely demonstrate an inability to consistently answer questions correctly, at or above the level of difficulty needed to pass the exam. This usually indicates a lack of nursing knowledge, considerable difficulties with taking a standardized test, or a deficiency in critical thinking skills. However, when a candidate takes all 130 questions and fails, you almost pass. This just means the computer does not make a determination when it selects the last question. If the last question is below the level of difficulty needed to pass, then you fail. So if you took longer than the minimum 60 questions, you were probably familiar with most of the content, but you may have difficulty using critical thinking skills or taking a standardized test. The latter happened to me. I used up the whole 6 hours and only answered 150 questions. Now that you have determined why you failed, it's time to establish a plan of action for your next step. So here are 3 resources that help kickstart your NCLEX retake plan. I'm going to give you a sneak peek for each course. The first book, it's actually PDF that I read after failing the exam, was Kaplan NCLEX-RN prep test. Treat NCLEX as a battle and, as they say, to win, understand your enemy. And Kaplan can help you with that, to get to know NCLEX more. I tell you, I was way more than confident after going over the whole book. It is divided into 5 parts. The first part is all about NCLEX-RN exam overview and test-taking strategies. Second is content review and practice. Third is a practice test. Fourth, the licensure process, and the last part is NCLEX exam resources. It's like a walkthrough to the entire NCLEX and not the typical book about diseases, treatments, and the nursing process, because it discusses the content according to how the NCLEX is made. I won't go into details nor skim the whole book for you, but I'm gonna discuss a few pages. I'm gonna start on page 114. According to Kaplan, recognize expected outcomes. Usually, when we take an exam, we always think that the question is always the problem that we need to solve, that what we should look for among the options is something that doesn't make sense or something that is wrong. However, NCLEX does not only focus on problems, rather it also includes expected outcomes. These are the kind of questions that contain values within normal limits or patient is just in a stable condition. Take a look at this question. The physician orders an arterial blood gas, ABG, for a client receiving oxygen at 6 liters per minute. Results show pH value of 7.37, HCO3 26 mmHg, PCO2 42 millimeters Hg, PO2 90 millimeters Hg. Which of the following should the nurse do first? Increase the rate of oxygen flow the client is receiving, elevate the head of the bed, document the results in the chart, or instruct the client to cough and deep breathe. In this question, two things are significant: the lab values and the word first. These are the normal values of ABGs, and we can easily recognize that all are within normal limits. Now let's reword the question. What you should do with this normal ABG values? Obviously, options 1, 2, and 4 are eliminated since there is really nothing wrong with the patient. Option 3 is the answer because you just need to document it. This is how important to be knowledgeable with laboratory values, because if you miss this part, you'll likely move on to the next keyword, which is first, that might probably lead you to choosing either option 2 or 1, following the ABC rule, making it incorrect. The second resource I used was Mark Klimek. Though I've used this during my first take, I didn't really take it seriously, but just for the purpose of using it or finishing it, which is probably the reason why I failed. I was using all the resources for the wrong purpose. My goal was to finish everything to somewhat reassure myself that I did my part. So for my second preparation, I did it differently. For the limited time you need to review again, going over an entire book or your notes isn't gonna help. It just frustrates you more, especially if you can't even memorize and remember everything. Mark Klimek can, since he discusses just the principles that can be applied to all other diseases and treatments. This is exactly what you need. It is an audio recording that comes with its corresponding notes that contain blanks where you fill those out while listening to the discussion. He can definitely assure you that you need not study all the diseases because his discussion and notes are enough, and you'll be amazed yourself. And the things I learned was not only applicable to the exam, but I definitely applied those as well in an actual hospital setting. Let me show you. Here's an example of acid-base imbalance with my favorite line: if you don't know what to pick, choose metabolic acidosis. Another is about lacinectomy and spinal cords. I've used this on a question that I didn't really have any idea of the disease nor encountered it in my nursing college years. But as previously discussed from Kaplan, I applied the expected outcome. The disease merely acted as a supporting detail, but the question was all about what you need to prioritize for a patient scheduled for operation whose cervical spine was affected. According to Mark Klimek, cervical spine innervates diaphragm and arms, so the most important assessment is breathing, then arms functioning comes after. And there was an option for breathing, and I knew exactly what to choose. With the help of Mark Klimek, I was aware to what the expected outcome is when the cervical spine is affected. Once you are familiar with the NCLEX blueprint by Kaplan and the principles by Mark Klimek, it's time to do some practice tests. Uworld is like the closest thing to NCLEX, which is even harder than the actual exam. It's a good way of setting your mindset so that in the actual test, everything will be just easy peasy. What I liked about it is how detailed Uworld is when it comes to rationales. Unlike in practice tests where you'll be given with just a one-line rationale, Uworld, on the other hand, discusses the whole disease complete with pictures, diagrams, and etc. Let me show you an example. Information associated with questions are easily remembered than just plainly reading it from a book. Plus, when you've mistakenly answered the question, you even remember it more. As the saying goes, you learn more from your mistakes. The other thing also I like is you'll have the option to choose questions according to systems, those that you have not answered yet, and etc. So what I suggest is you start answering by system. That way you can easily familiarize the content. We also have an assessment test, but is only available for a 3-month subscription. This is what I chose back then, and I tell you, answering the assessment test was very traumatic as I've experienced it. I answered it on time, hours before my exam, and I got 27th percentile below the passing level. Like, dude, there's no more backing out, because I was about to take the exam in a few hours after that. But what amazed me was the fact that I could definitely remember that I got similar questions for my assessment. So the trauma was all worth it. You might be wondering why I only mentioned 3, yet now I'm still continuing this video for the 4th resource, which is LaCharity, prioritization, delegation, and assignment. The reason is recency effect, which means you are more likely to recall the items from the list that you studied last. Prioritization, delegation, and assignment type of question is the most reliable indicator that you are more likely to pass the exam. It's not the SATA, because SATA can still vary from easy to difficult type of questions. Most of my questions for my first take were SATA, but those were giving me easy questions, which is obviously a red flag. Prioritization, delegation, and assignment is like the terminal type of questions, and once you've reached this part, you've proven that you are equipped with the nursing knowledge, and now you are on the process of applying your critical thinking skills. I find this part super boring and dragging since it's already at the last part of the exam, yet questions are getting longer, including the options. This takes up your patience and endurance, so do take a break. Here's what it looks like. The last thing you need to deal also is exam anxiety. Despite having the advantage of experiencing the exam, anxiety is always there, this time having the fear of failing it again. I can't exactly tell you how to deal with it since it's a case-to-case basis, but I have a story to share that really proves anxiety is just in your mind and it's you yourself who is allowing it to control you. During my second exam, I had 2 fresh piercing in my tragus and my helix like a week old. Of course, I was all aware that no jewelry is allowed during the exam, but I had to put something in it to prevent from closing. What I was not prepared of is the pain removing the earrings, like extreme pain, and was bleeding. The funny part is I wasn't any more anxious of taking the exam, but I was afraid that my tragus and helix piercing might close and heal in no time. The pain diverted my anxiety, which have helped me focus more on the exam. So find anything that can help divert your anxiety while preparing for the exam. Good luck and congratulations in advance. That's it. Hope you learned something from this video. If yes, don't forget to click like, leave a comment for some video suggestion, and of course subscribe to my channel. I'll be linking all the resources in the description below where you can download it, and up next will be license endorsement to Pennsylvania. So stay tuned as I take you with me in discovering nursing career. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.